In this video, we're going to learn another technique for solving equations that are quadratic. It's called completing the square. Here's the steps for completing the square. Step 1, we need it to be in, quote, the correct form. And depending on what we want to do with it, this can change slightly, but in general, we really like for it to look like this. We want the x squared guy to be first, and then the number that has just an x, and we really like the constant to be on the other side, and you'll see why here in a little bit. In order for it to be in the correct form, one key thing is that this term right here, this x squared guy, must have a lead coefficient of 1. And if it doesn't, then we're going to have to fix it. Step 2, we're going to find the magic number. Well, finding the magic number involves taking the number that's in front of your x, your b number, and dividing it in half, and then squaring it. That's how we're going to find that magic number. And then we're going to take that magic number and add it to both sides of the equation. And when you do that, you have forced it into something that will factor really nicely. And once it's factored, you're going to see that we can solve for x using the square root method that we've already learned. So let's look at a problem. Okay, first things first, it's not in the right form. So we need to move the 20 to the other side. So I'm going to minus the 20 over. The other thing is the number in front of the x squared is a negative 2. And remember, we need a lead coefficient of 1. So I'm going to divide everybody by negative 2 to get that x squared to be just a 1. So this is going to give me x squared. And this is negative divided by a negative, or positive 6x. And then over here, a negative divided by a negative is also positive 10. So that's step 1. We've got it in the right form. Step 2, we're going to go out to the side and find that magic number. So I'm taking the number in front of my x, which is 6. We're going to go out to the side and do 6 cut in half, and then squared. Well, 6 divided by 2 is 3, and when I square 3, I get 9. So back over here in the equation, we need to add 9 to both sides. Because what I do to one side, I got to do to the other to keep it balanced. So that's why I'm put it on the other side as well. But what happens when you do that is this right here will always be something that factors very nicely. So lead coefficient of 1, we can go straight to our factors. Both positive. Multiplying to 9 and adding to 6, well, that's 3 and 3. In fact, if you've done this correctly, this factor will be the same as that factor. And over on the other side, we have 19. Now, because these factors match, we can write them the fancy way. Anything times itself is being squared. Now we can use the square root method to solve this. I'm going to move this over here so we've got a little more room. So I've got x plus 3 quantity squared equals 19. To get rid of the squared, we're going to square root both sides, and don't forget that plus or minus. The square and the root's going to cancel, and I'll be left with x plus 3 and plus or minus the square root of 19, which I don't think I can simplify. There's nothing that's going to help me there. But then last, we got to get x by itself. And those are not like terms, so we cannot put those together. And there it is. Again, remember this is two things. So you could write it negative 3 plus root 19 and negative 3 minus root 19. Either way you want to write your answer is totally fine. Let's do one more. Okay, form. Let's see. Step 1, correct form. We're close. I see the x squared has a coefficient of 1, so we're good there. I think the only thing I need to do is fix that little 2. He needs to be on the other side to get this in the right form. So we're going to have x squared minus 10x. And on the other side, we're going to have a negative 9. Okay, we're in the right form. Let's go find the magic number. So we're taking the number in front of the x squared. Careful, it's a negative 10. And we're going to bring it over here. We're going to cut it in half or divide by 2 and then square it. So once I've got it cut in half, I've got negative 5. Squaring that gives me positive 25. So we're going to come back over here and add 25 in. That's what we need. But what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. If you've done this correctly, we should now be able to factor this. Just a little hint, it's going to factor into whatever you squared over here. What's negative 5? So this should have a negative 5 in my factors. But let's go ahead and get it factored. Let's see, x and x. It's a plus in the back, same signs. The negative 10 told me these are both negative. Multiplying to 25, but giving me a 10, there's my negative 5. On the other side, I've got negative 9 plus 25, which is going to be 16. Now remember, we can write this the fancy way. This is x minus 5, quantity squared, equals 16. Once we've got it to this point, we can use that square root method. So we're going to square root both sides. Don't forget the plus or minus. The square and the square root will cancel, and I'll be left with x minus 5 plus or minus the square root of 16, but we can do that. It's just 4. Solve for x by getting the 5 on the other side. It's a minus, so we're going to add 5 to both sides. So this is going to be 5 plus or minus 4. And many times we would stop there. But in this case, 5 and 4 are things we could put together. So if we can put them together, we should. Remember, when you have 5 plus or minus 4, that really means 5 plus 4 and 5 minus 4. So we're going to get an answer of 9 and 1. It tells me that, you know what, we could have actually taken this 11, added it over, set it equal to 0, and this would have factored. It would have factored into x minus 9 and x minus 1. And that probably would have been faster. However, there are going to be times in math where we need this technique that we just did for other things. In fact, this form right here that we've got it in is really helpful when we do things with parabolas and circles and graphing. So sometimes it's not about just getting the answers, it's about getting things in different formats so we can do other math to them, and that happens a lot with completing the square.